Hey guys, welcome back. So I am back with another Cozy Up To installment, and this time we're talking all about cozy mysteries set on cruise ships. So I mentioned in my last video, which was my May wrap-up, how I love books that are set on cruise ships. And it's for a couple of reasons, actually. Something about the environment, I think that it automatically kind of gets you into vacation mode, which gives it this fun and whimsical feel. And then when it comes to mysteries, I feel that cruise ships are a fun, locked room mystery setting that is different than your typical actual locked room or snowed in hotel. And so it's for that reason that it's really one of my favorite settings when it comes to cozies, which is why I wanted to share with you a handful of cozy mysteries that all will take place on cruise ships. Now, not only did I want to talk about this because it's my favorite setting, but I thought that it would be a perfect topic to talk about now that we are going into the summer season. I I know that we are kind of coming onto the heels of the whole quarantine situation, and so we're able to get out and about a little, or maybe a lot more than we did this time last year. And so I know that there are some cruise ships that are kind of dipping their toe into having patrons back on board. And so whether you are one of those lucky few who are actually able to take a cruise now, or you just miss cruising and you really want to live vicariously through another character that is on a cruise, I figured that this list would be for you. So that said, let's go ahead and talk about the books. I've got a handful of them here. I actually have more than I typically do on my Cozy Mystery Roundups. That's how much I love this theme. But we're going to kind of breeze through them because I don't want to keep you here all day, because if you find a couple of these books, you're going to want to download them and start reading right away. So that said, let's go ahead and dive into the book. So the first one that I have, and it's no surprise that I'm kicking this list off with it, but it's a murder she wrote, and it's specifically Murder on the QE2, which is book 9 in this series. I'll be totally honest. I remembered this book first, but there are technically 3 books in the Murder She Wrote series that take place on cruise ships, but Murder on the QE2 is actually my favorite. It's obviously more memorable. But yeah, we've got our girl Jessica Fletcher. She is on a cruise, and stuff happens, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to go into the plot. This is more so to talk about the cruise ship setting, because this particular boat is literally called the QE2, the Queen Elizabeth II. And so the author does a really good job giving a lot of description to the ship, which almost acts as a secondary character, because part of the reason that Jessica is on that ship is that it's like an inaugural sail. And so when things go wrong and all of that jazz, they talk a lot about this cruise ship because it was jinxed to begin with, and we want to get to the bottom of it. Next, we have Terns of Endearment, which is the Meg Langslow series, and it's book 25. This was actually the book that I talked about in my wrap-up that I just finished. Y'all know I love me some Meg Langslow, that whole series, but this one takes place on a cruise, which, to be honest, I've read about, oh my goodness, like 90% of the series, and I believe this is the first book that takes place somewhere other than their town. I know for sure this is the only book that takes place on a cruise in this series, but pretty sure this is the first one where they actually go somewhere, and that alone makes it so much more fun. And so it's not even just Meg that ends up on the cruise ship, but it's like her grandfather, who is on board giving nature lectures, and like 15 of her family members. So you can imagine the chaos and the hijinks that happen, and it makes it so fun. And as I mentioned in my wrap up, one of the reasons why I rated this book 5 stars was because there were it were some twists in there that I didn't see coming. So not only do you have your cruise ship setting, but you have a cozy mystery kind of twist that is definitely not your typical cozy mystery trope, and it will definitely keep you reading. Next, we have A Crime of Passionfruit, which is book number 6 in the Bake Shop Mystery series by Ellie Alexander. The wrap-up before last month, so April's wrap-up, I actually binged the series, and I'm pretty sure I read 3 or 4 of those books back to back, and I just love that town and being part of that setting. But in this particular book, they clearly leave the town and they go on this cruise ship, which was so much fun because again, as much as you love being with the characters in their small town, whenever they do leave and go somewhere different, whether it's a cruise or somewhere else, it's always kind of a refreshing change of pace. That way you get a new setting, the character gets a new setting, and you both have time to kind of miss your small town. So when you read the next book and it's back in the town, you guys are kind of like reinvigorated. And that's exactly what happened on this series. On this book. Now, the difference is that the reason that our main character Jules is invited on the cruise ship is because her estranged husband is desperate because their pastry chef quit, and so they need someone to step in. Obviously, Jules is a pastry chef or a baker, and she had worked on the cruises before, and so she's totally familiar with how things work. And so while she's there helping and being the pastry chef, she ends up having to solve a mystery like she always does, but then beyond that she has to deal with being in close quarters with her estranged husband, which leads to a lot of kind of emotions that she has to face and figure out. So in addition to your mystery, you do get this kind of personal life aspect, which I thought was really interesting. I think that the author did a great job balancing the two. It wasn't just the mystery and it wasn't an overemphasis on Jules's relationship, but a happy medium of both. Next we have Tidal Wave, which is part of the Booktown series, and oh my goodness, it's been a while since I read the Booktown series, but I think of it so fondly because, I mean, first of all, it's a bookish cozy mystery, but I was surprised actually to see that they incorporated, or rather found a way for things to take place on the cruise ship, but that's not to say that you are not still going to enjoy it. And to be honest, I was really hesitant because one of the things that I love so much about this series was the setting. The fact that you literally have a town that is based on books, or, you know, surrounded by different bookshops of different themes. And so to go away from that, are you in essence kind of losing anything? No, because what you're losing in kind of like the town square and bookshops, you're gaining with the cruise ship settings. And like I mentioned, it's always fun to kind of switch things up and have our main character leave their beloved small town so that the two of you and the main character can take a break, go on vacation, and then return back to the small town in the next book. And this book was no exception to that. Now, I will say really quickly, this is book 10, and I have to just give props to the kind of double meaning of the title. Tidal Wave, you've got title. Anyway, I did a whole video about like punny book titles, so check that out. I'm still in that mentality, which is why I wanted to bring it up. But you are still getting kind of your bookish themes just a little bit in this one, because the cruise that they book, I believe, are for mystery lovers. So I mean, that kind of works out perfectly. It's a cozy mystery, so you as a reader naturally love mysteries, and so you're kind of following along with our main character and her sister, because they're kind of a tag team in this one as they are on this mystery cruise. Oh man, okay, so this next one is so nostalgic for me because I read it years ago, and it's called Dect, which is the first book in the Reagan Riley mystery series. This one is actually written by Higgins Clark, who is Mary Higgins Clark's daughter. Both women are fabulous. They both write mysteries, except for Carol Higgins Clark. Her mysteries are a little bit lighter, and I guess I would consider this one a cozy a little bit. I don't know, you tell me, because Reagan, who is our main heroine, she is technically a private investigator. So she's not really amateur, but at the same time, all of the books in the series really give me cozy mystery vibes, which is why I wanted to include it on this list. They're so fun, they're quick reads, they're really good on audio too. You guys can hear my dog barking in the background. I refuse to cut. Okay, I lied. I cut just a little. So this book surprisingly doesn't start off on a cruise ship, but rather eventually has our character end up on a cruise ship. What ends up happening is that she's attending a, class reunion, and one of her former classmates ends up dying. And so Reagan is set to kind of almost just let it be, because, you know, what can she do? She's in a totally different country. And so she decides to take a cruise back home, because it ends up aligning to where I believe her parents are going to be on this cruise, or she got the cruise for free somehow. And so instead of, you know, having a flight back home, she's taking the long way. She's taking the scenic route. And so on this cruise back home, basically this death and this mystery behind it ends up following her onto the ship. And so she has no choice but to investigate investigate it, and it's just so much fun. Some of these books I know some people don't enjoy, but I just find them so endearing and charming. They're not super deep like Mary Higgins Clark's books, but at the same time, don't go in with that expectation. They're more like cozy mysteries, which is exactly why I wanted to put in on this list. So if you're a cozy lover and you've never read a book by Carol Higgins Clark or this Reagan Riley series, I suggest maybe picking one up and seeing what you think about it. It doesn't even have to be this one, but I just find this one so enjoyable because it takes place on a cruise ship and it really just kicks off the series as a whole. Ooh, okay, so this next one is called Shattered at Sea, which is book 5 in the Webb's Glass Shop Mystery series. I have only read the first book in this series, but when I saw that there was a cruise ship setting, I knew I had to add it to this list because, I mean, cruise ships. And also the first book was so fun, and to kind of have the concept of a glassblower find their way onto a cruise ship, it was just intriguing. So this one is actually a Mediterranean cruise, so we're kind of switching it up from our like tropical cruises, which were mentioned before, and already the descriptions of all of that, that's what's gonna get me. Full disclosure, I haven't read this book yet, but again, I really enjoyed the first book in the series, and so I'm curious to see how the author integrates our glass shop owner onto this Mediterranean cruise. And I'm just looking forward to the descriptions, because one thing that all of these have in common is the descriptions of the ship and the fact, again, that this one takes place on the Mediterranean. I'm going to get kind of the same cruise foundation, but a total change of scenery, which I'm totally looking forward to because I'm not at all familiar with the Mediterranean and I'd love to read more about it. Next up, I want to talk about Killer Cruise, which is the 8th book in the Jane Austen series, and that is Jaine, Jane Austen. She's actually a writer for hire, basically, and so all of the books are kind of interwoven with her kind of writing expertise. You know, she can be hired out for personal ads, romance letters, declarations of love, etc. So this time around in book 8, we find our girl Jane Austen on a cruise. And like I said, the thing that ties all of these stories together is the cruise ship settings. So I actually haven't read this one, but I'm super excited about it because I love the concept behind Jane Austen. I actually found the first one at a used bookstore a while back, and I just got such a kick out of the punny title. Again, you guys know that I have a thing for punny titles, and so having the Jane Austen name and having her be a writer and kind of weaving that into being an amateur sleuth, I think it's just so much fun, and adding the cruise ship setting takes that fun to a whole new level. So these next 2 recommendations that I want to talk about are not actually books, but rather series themselves, because the entire series is set on a cruise, which I'm like, yes, sign me up. I've actually only read the first book in this first series that I want to talk about, but I mean, they're all set on cruise ships. What more do I need to tell you? Anyway, it is called Starboard Secrets. That's the first book in the cruise ship cozy mystery series. Now, the thing that stands out to me about this one, other than the fact that it's obviously set on a cruise ship, is that our amateur sleuth is an older, more mature heroine, which I think is always such a good time. I know I've mentioned in previous videos how it's always refreshing to have more experienced characters who are amateur sleuths, because we don't often see that. Don't get me wrong, we know they exist, and I could name a handful of them now, but it's the minority rather than the majority. And so anytime I have an older woman who's giving me Jessica Fletcher vibes, I am here for it. And that's exactly what you're getting in this one. I believe the woman is retired or something like that, and it's been a while since I read this. So she's retired, and so she decides to kind of take on another job to spend her time. I could totally be misremembering that, but I do remember that her age, not necessarily an issue, but it is something that is startling when she does meet all of her crew members when she abords this ship, because she introduces herself to her roommate, and the roommate is totally thrown off that the woman that is her new roommate is much older than anticipated. I mean, it's all said in kind of harmless or jest, and it's not a factor necessarily into the plot, but it is something that is brought up often enough to where readers are essentially reminded that she's an older woman, and she uses that to her benefit. So I'm like, yes, use what you've got. Next series that I want to talk about is the Darcy Kavanaugh series. Again, this one is also set on a cruise ship, but the first book is called Dress to Keel. I thought it was interesting because the name of the series doesn't actually mention cruising, but it does take place on a cruise. So obviously our amateur sleuth in this case is a woman named Darcy. She's very fashion forward, might I add. And so each subsequent book is essentially trying to investigate a murder that happens on the cruise ship, which it's just so funny because when you actually think about these books, I mean cozies in general, but when you actually think about all of these deaths, these mysterious deaths and murders that happen on cruise ships, it's a wonder why the cruise ship industry hasn't gone down. But anyway, that's a topic for a different time. I always get a kick out of thinking about it a little bit too hard. But yeah, so those are two actual series that take place on cruise ships. I should have checked, to be honest, to see if they were all available on Kindle Unlimited. I know the Starboard Secrets at the time that I bought it was, or borrowed it, I don't know, maybe it was $0. I'm not sure. I'll put in the description if it is available on KU. But that said, if you are looking for more of a series, you can use either of these two series to kind of carry you through the cruise ship season or the summertime season if you want to stay with a certain character the whole time through. Okay, so this last one, we are going to give it an honorable mention because I felt compelled to put it on this list, even if to some people it might not scream cozy mystery off bat, and that is Death on the Nile. Yes, Death on the Nile, in which our amateur sleuth, who's not really an amateur, is Hercule Poirot, written by Dame Agatha Christie. Now, I think that her books give me cozy mystery vibes, even if technically they're not cozy mysteries. Now, yes, Miss Marple is cozy because she's not technically a sleuth. She's an amateur sleuth. However, Poirot, if you want to get technical with it, he actually does solve crimes, and so he's not amateur. But again, that's why this is honorable mention, because I love this book so much that I wanted to talk about it, even if you guys have all heard about it before. Maybe there's one person who's never heard of it. But anyway, this one takes place on a boat. It's not technically a cruise, but again, I think I'm like shoehorning this into my list because it's just such a fantastic read that holds up after decades, maybe a century at this point. Depending, I think the book came out in the 20s. Anyway, I digress. So basically what we have is a mysterious death that happens on a boat, and so you've got a cast of people. Some of them are strangers, some of them know each other, and all of them are suspects. And so it's up to our Detective Poirot to figure out, get to the bottom of this. This one is like a double locked door mystery, if I'm remembering correctly, because not only does it take place on a boat, in which case your list of suspects is all contained on this boat, but I believe that the murder actually takes place in the person's room, which is locked. So it's literally their locked room that takes place on a boat. So it's, again, double locked room mystery. It's just so well done. I'm super excited also for the movie adaptation to come out with Kenneth Branagh, and I just needed a reason to talk about this, really. So anyway, yes, whether or not you count that one, I'm putting it in as just a little asterisk foottail at the end of this list, but I do hope that you enjoy the rest of the books. They are technically cozy mysteries, so that you have your pick. If you love cruise ship settings as much as I do, you've got these handful of books, and don't get me wrong, there are so much more. When I was doing my research, I had to whittle it down to a mix of books that I have read and really loved and recommend, and then books that got high ratings that I haven't necessarily gotten to yet, but I still feel comfortable recommending them because others enjoyed them. So that said, if you're still with me, please like and subscribe if you like this video and you want to see more like it. And in the meantime, happy reading, happy summer, happy cruising if you're one of the lucky few who get to do that, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye!